Hello and welcome to Shite Talk, an Irish history podcast. It is just Jason doing the introduction this week. I say Jason, that's me. I'm talking in the third person. It's late here. I'm in Texas. It's 1 a.m. I'm finishing off the podcast as we speak, doing the introduction at the very last minute. I'm going to try and keep this introduction quite short. So I would just like to say that we greatly appreciate the the record-setting 11,500 downloads we did this month, which is awesome. Thank you all very much for sharing and telling people, getting your family and friends to listen. We greatly appreciate that. If you could continue to do that, or if people who haven't done it already could do that, or if you want to follow us on Instagram, all of that at Shite Talk History, or email us at shitetalkhistory@gmail.com. All of those good things, and buymeacoffee.com. That's where you can support this podcast. Sorry to beat on about it constantly, but we would also like to pay for what you're about to hear next, which is our brand new theme song, which we've had our silent producer Dan, not so silent now, you can finally hear his wonderful voice like an angel. But enjoy this new song you're about to hear every week from now on. This is the new Shite Talk intro. And we recorded this like a good few weeks ago when we thought that the Battle of the Boyne Protestant walking Christmas July 12th saga that Kevin made be 3 episodes, so we're about a month late with some references to Jack Charlton, so we've cut all of that out of the intro, but there might be some references to it during the podcast. Ignore that. We'll come back to it later on when he rises on Easter, much like Christ, because that's what he was to me and the Irish national football team. R.I.P. Jack.
Gather around now, you're in for a story. Old tales of lore, all in search of a glory. The history and mystery of lads, lasses and all. Discoveries and voyages, the rise and the fall. Follow me now as we go back in time. We trace the steps of Irish lineage to find. Joseph from Carlo and Kevin the dog. Guide you through the ways of Shite Talk.
In Victorian times, Kevin, and I won't need to tell you what years that time period covered.
Not at all. 1810 to 1880.
Well, yeah, so the reason I thought I wouldn't have to tell you is because I assumed you'd guess and then be wrong, and then I could lord that over you.
But have I done it?
And no, You've played into my tricks, my plan, Kevin, dastardly as it may be. It was actually 1837 to 1901, because that was the year.
I actually knew that. Yeah, she died in 1901.
Well, that's what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
The reason it's called the Victorian era is because that's the date range that Queen Victoria ran the 9 circles of the British Empire. And Dublin was a very different sort of place back then, Kevin.
I'll tell you why I know that, because I was reading this the other day that Queen Victoria had a daughter also called Victoria, and that was like her eldest born. At some point in the 1960s, the British changed the rules of lineage so that instead of it going to your oldest male heir, it just went to your oldest heir. But if that had been in place during Queen Victoria's time, the lineage would have passed to Victoria, who had married a lovely man called William, who was the king of Prussia, I guess, at the time. And the two of them had a kid called William. And they died off pretty young. I think she died in 1901, the same year as her mother, Queen Victoria, which means the lineage would have passed to her son, also known as Kaiser Wilhelm III. So that's like 15 years before World War I, the Kaiser of Germany would have also been the King of England.
So say all
of us, indeed. So there's some bizarre lineage magic for you. But yeah, I was reading that the other day, and that's...
Do you know that she also had a bastard child who had a claim to the throne?
No.
Yeah, it was called Victoria's Secret. So in...
What a leader.
As I was saying... Dublin, I can set them up and knock them down myself.
Well done.
Yeah. Dublin was a very different sort of place back in these times, because it was the kind of place where you could get change from a fiver after you'd order a pint. You could get change from a fiver after ordering a bag of sliced potatoes and a battered sausage.
Yep.
You could even, Kevin, get change from a fiver after getting a bus ticket.
Okay.
And that's not because, I don't think that's because of inflation. I just assumed that back then Dublin bus dealt with physical change instead of
Sure, yeah.
like actual notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever have to do that when you go into the depot on O'Connell Street to hand in a bunch of like, you know, the receipt notes? You're like, oh, here's €3, but it's only, you know, it's only $1.90. Here's change.
Yeah.
This is just paper. Go to the depot. Like,
So for all of our...
have you ever done that?
No, I did it in college. I think I like racked them all up and then went and got it. But for...
That's what I have it written down here just as an off chance that you give me shit for that, for being a tight bastard. That I've written it down to say it was in college.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you're like giving up 80 cent like 2 or 3 times a week. You're like, no, this is not happening, because a pint of Olm in DCU was only €2.50.
Sure. Well, for all of our audience outside of Dublin, Dublin Bus doesn't deal in notes. So you have to give them the exact change. And if you go over your amount, they'll just give you a receipt for the fare. And then you have to take those receipts to an office on O'Connell Street. And you have to walk in with your head held high and ask for, hand over your bunch of receipts and ask for those 20 cents off of every €2 for that 180 fare. But yeah, as you're saying, man, in college, that's just pay dirt.
Yeah, there's never a queue. There either.
No.
It's just like, they're like, oh, even the person when you go there, they're like, you want to do what now? Oh, we don't deal in notes. Never realized, never thought of it.
It's one step of bringing your big jar of coins to like the machine in Spar to get it turned into a note that you can only spend in Spar, and also takes like 20% off the top.
I remember, I don't know if I told you this off air about how I went to Waffle House a couple of weeks ago. It was one of my housemates. If people in Ireland are familiar with Waffle House, it's like American breakfast food. My housemate Hunt went during COVID. Hunt wanted to buy a meal for a first responder, so he wanted to buy his own meal, then he wanted to buy another meal that would just be given to a first responder wherever they go to, whenever they end up going to Waffle House.
Okay.
So he went and got his meal and then went to pay for this other one, bearing in mind that they're running this campaign all over the internet. You go to the place, it's giant fucking movie poster sized things saying, oh, buy a meal for a first responder. No one in the place working knew how to do it. They're like, literally, no one's ever thought about doing that before. They're like, this has been running for a month. Yeah, no one's done it. No one's helped for a month. They would have been better off putting the money in from the marketing campaign into just giving meals to the first responders.
Sure. Yeah.
Because all they've done is spend millions on a campaign to say, we're going to help the first responders if you do, and then nobody would.
That's what first responders want as well, waffles.
Well, you wouldn't actually get too many waffles in Waffle House. It's not their go-to.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's
Waffle House is one of my favourite places over here, Kev, because it's usually a road trip kind of place, and they've got a quick factoid that they've got a thing, you can look it up online. It's called the Waffle House Index, and it's used by FEMA to
the disaster relief places.
Yeah, it's used by that to decide how badly affected an area has been through disaster, because Waffle House have in place such a good system to deal with getting back open if electricity's gone, if just whatever disaster might happen. So they use Waffle House as a way to say, like, hey, it's been a month and Waffle House still isn't open. I think we're going to need to go and help Louisiana.
It's been a month and Waffle House has had one donation to help a first responder. I think things are getting pretty grim down there.
Oh no, well, they wouldn't have even got the one, because what happened after a while was Hunt tried to explain them what to do, and they're like, I don't know. And he's like, I don't work here, but I'm going to have a guess. And then they couldn't figure it out, so he was like, well, how about I just give you the exact amount of money, or I just give you $10. You stick a piece of paper with it onto a spike, and then whenever someone comes through, you just cash that in for a thing. And then he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So he just left without doing it.
Yeah, fair enough.
He spent a good 10 minutes trying to help out a dude, like some first responder.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
Yep.
Not a chance. But anyway, back to Dublin, Kev. It's the Victorian era of Dublin. Things are different. One of the places that's seen the most amount of change since those times, Kevin, is
O'Connell Street.
Close enough. Halfpenny Bridge.
Okay.
Because back then you used to have to slackline across it. They didn't. Then they got all highfalutin and brought these concrete and stones and railings and such. It's just all this hipster thing about bridges. I don't know. They like to They like to use their feet to transport them places and be steady on the ground. No, do you know? Oh, you know what it is? I've confused it.
What is it?
I've gotten that confused with people slacklining across the canal during the summer in Dublin when they're drinking.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with slacklining.
You say that because you're one of those.
Yeah, yes. Well, back in
think
February, myself and my housemate were slacklining. And as a joke, he thought up of selling t-shirts saying Slack Lives Matter. That was before George Floyd. But thank God we didn't follow that, that investment. That was literally,
Well,
it must have been summertime already. So that was like, by the time we would have received the first boxes of the Slack Lives Matter t-shirts, George Floyd would have been murdered, and egg would have been on our face. We would have had to hide those boys.
Don't change. Don't get rid of the idea completely, Kevin. Just pivot. It's slack and tans.
Yeah, yes. Come out for slack and cans.
Yeah.
I think that was that was the workaround.
Well, actually, the Halfpenny Bridge has changed a bit since then, but the main thing was the Docklands, Kevin.
Okay.
Now it's Halfpenny Bridge included. That is on. It's on the river. It leads down to the Docklands.
It's all related. It's all aqua adjacent.
Because this was a time before the redevelopment of the Docklands area. Through it's like now they've redeveloped it and they've made it like a cultural hub with empty shopping centres and huge amounts of disparity between the historical locals and then the newly found international businesses.
Sure, yeah.
The ones that would take advantage of the advent of a 12.5% HQ corporation tax loophole that our government in turn would actually never look to take back. It was a different time.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Apparently, someone told me the other day that on Google Maps, Grand Canal Dock is now called Google Dock. And I haven't bothered to check that up, but I guess they have the power to do that.
I like that though. I don't like it, but if they are going to call it, I like even call it Google Doc because it makes sense.
That is pretty funny.
Another place that's changed a lot over the years, Kevin, is where our story today is set, and it's kind of it's along the Liffey. It's back in the Dizay, as the kids these days say, I believe. Now, Temple Bar wasn't the lively zone of controlled chaos, of price-gouged, pint-eyed tourists it is today, Kev. No, it was a far shadier place back then. Back then, those streets were only frequented by ladies of the night. So, in that sense, it's nice to know that some things haven't changed.
Yes.
The area was policed by younger guards, very inexperienced, at the time known as Johnny Raws. Don't laugh, Kevin. Don't laugh.
What, Johnny?
I know what you're thinking, and it's not. This isn't. Don't bring this podcast into the gutter. They're called Johnny Raws just because of their refusal to wrap it up, because they're good Catholic boys.
Of course, yes, yeah. Johnny Raws. Is that just a play on Johnny Law?
I think so, and it's before either of those things. Right?
Sure, yeah. Johnny Law, Johnny Raw. What was their canine squad called? Johnny Paul.
Johnny Raw Dog.
Johnny Raw Dog.
No, so they were quite inexperienced and had to be kept away from the main places of police attention, i.e. the nicer parts of town where rich people lived.
So wait, they took all these young inexperienced guards and sent them down to the red light district.
Yes.
And called them Johnny Raws. And they just, I'm sure they just set that all in motion and were like, this is fine. I can't see any negative outcomes from this situation.
For the listeners at home, I think we're quite the same in that sense. As we write these stories and research them a lot, we don't tend to write that many jokes ourselves. We leave it up to the other people. But if you're going to research something for a few days, there's going to be things that, as comedians, pop in that you're going to have to keep it in. Much like a Johnny Raw, keep it in. Like reading that and then not having to, just the mental fortitude I have and the respect I have for myself now, Kevin, for not spending the next hour just giving you all of my jokes about Johnny Raws.
Johnny Raws.
Yeah, it's my new stand-up special. Now, so the
Johnny Raw, quick on the draw, fan of the pull-out method.
Cash in the paw, because he's a gigolo. But to set the scene for the night in question and the time period that this story takes place, did you know back then Dublin would get around 50 days of fog per year, heavy fog per year, give or take?
Oh yeah.
Which seems weird because how does that change? Is that
I don't know. Isn't it was
global
London
warming?
fog.
Is it
Oh, yeah.
global warming? Is that what it is?
I don't. Is it just the general smog? I think it's general smog. We've just gotten better at like hiding our.
Could it be the fog? Could be the fog of political oppression, but usually that's not as tangible a visual thing. Now,
No.
because of this fog, there was hijinks at the time. Awful stuff would happen around Kev. You'd have people knocking into each other, falling over. You'd have mail vans going missing.
Female vans going missing.
Nice.
Gender neutral band. The whole gambit.
People would fall into the canals, which
Sure.
not sure, Kevin, because if you know it's heavily fogged and people have a proclivity to falling into the canals, don't walk by the canals on the day when it's very foggy. And if you do, try this. Here's a life hack.
It's foggy.
Walk in a straight line. And then every single time you feel yourself going off of the concrete into the water, stop.
It's foggy 50 days of the year. Listen, I'm not gonna walk around in a straight line like some sort of giraffe. You know, I'm a meanderer. I take it 1 foot at a time. I go where my legs please. You know, if that ends up going off the edge of the canal, so be it.
Just having said all of this now, I'm starting to wonder: is this the reason for the foggy dew? Maybe Ireland used to be foggier.
Oh yeah, maybe. But why didn't they have railings?
Ireland.
Fair enough. That checks out.
Now, also the day that it is and the date is quite important, Kevin, because it's Halloween night.
Right. You love a good day. What day is it?
It's Thursday, the 31st of October, 1867. Also, just for anyone out there, the 31st of October has another name that's often used around the world for a very important festival that happens that night. It's called Samhain. And on Samhain, sometimes in parts of the world, I think they call it Halloween or something. But in 1867, Constable Patrick Keenan, although to be fair, there's a plaque around the area now that has his name as Patrick Kenna. And now I know what you're thinking, Kev. Is that a relation to, or is it in fact former Southampton, Blackburn Rovers, and 27 times capped Irish international Jeff Kenna?
You're taking the words right out of my mouth.
It wasn't him.
No, was it not Jeff? Jesus.
No, it was this lad from Mullingar, and he was walking down the road towards Wellington Quay.
Okay, so he's very lost. It's obviously been very foggy. He went out for a pint of milk in Mullingar. 4 hours later, he suddenly found he's still in the Keys. He's not sure where he's gone.
Well, no, Kevin. I think he's working as a guard now in Dublin. I think that's.
He's trying to work his way out of there.
But
sorry. So he's one of the Johnny Raws.
Yeah, he is a Johnny Raw. Patrick Johnny Raw Keenan. So now he's walking down towards Wellington Quay, sees a lad on Essex Bridge, thinking this was odd because, why, sir, you're not a prostitute. Whatever must you be doing here? So he goes down and follows him. Eventually, your man passes under a street lamp, and then Keenan catches a glimpse of a package that's under his arm, and thinking to himself that this is even more suspicious now because prostitutes don't carry packages, Kevin.
No.
They're not post women of the night.
Mm.
You know, plus, Kev, they don't deliver packages. They just receive them. So he yells out to him to stop, but the lad doesn't. Keenan keeps going after him, tries to grab at him, but your man spins back around and bang, shoots him right there, leaving him staggering around the quay for a bit before another young guard who's heard the shot, by the name of Hickey.
Just Johnny Raw Hickey.
It was nominative determinism. He loved biting women's necks, but
yeah, sure.
He was also a vampire.
It was either this or become a vampire,
yeah. So Hickey, who had been patrolling Parliament Street at the time, hops in a cab with a cabman and heads on down to the scene. Now, he falls...
The Criminal Assets Bureau were on them already. One package and they... where does this money trail lead?
We'll get on to the cabman in a minute, but
okay.
Hickey... So Keenan, while standing, falls into Hickey's arms as he arrives and says, "I'm shot. Bring me a priest." Which is...
Yes.
At the time, that's fair. Another guard...
I think that's a joke from Philadelphia, Here I Come.
Yeah.
Where there's when he gets a heart attack, don't go for a doctor, just go straight for the priest.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Another guard on duty that night, a man called Stephen Kelly, And I know what you're thinking, Kev. Is that the former Tottenham Hotspur and Fulham right back, 39 caps for the Republic of Ireland? And I'm happy to tell you, Kevin, that it was him.
Was it?
Before his fine career in football in England during the 2000s, he was an experienced policeman in the Victorian area of Dublin.
Funny enough, I always thought he had that in it. Whenever he was playing a cracker down the right wing, I always thought, there's a man who would have done well in the Victorian era. Yeah.
But as soon as he heard the gunfire, he ran down through Merchant's Arch and up towards Halfpenny Bridge, like he was late for a spot at a gig in the Battle of the Axe, Kev. That's how I judge Dublin. Where are the comedy gigs?
Sure.
And then
yes.
how do I get to them? And that, yeah. So it was down near the bridge. He came across another guard called Morton. Everyone was like Cher back then, just had one name.
Yeah.
Just no one.
You only seem to know that every time there's a full name, they're a football player. And then everyone else, like, did they play football? No, they get one name. They're only Cher when they haven't kicked a pigskin around a field. That's the only time you're interested.
Also, the only time anyone's ever referred to a football as a pigskin are when people who don't play football.
I know, yeah, and it's a very American thing as well. But I was sticking with the times. You know, what were footballs made of back in the Victorian eras?
Lower class distractions.
Look at this shiny bauble.
So Morton starts running with him. Now, Morton might be a little bit younger, or maybe he's just a bit fitter, but Kelly couldn't keep up. So by the time they reach Eustace Street, which isn't very far at all,
no,
he stopped,
Sure.
and because he was wrecked, and said afterwards, in his own words, quote, "I was thoroughly blown." So he stops then and turns back around and on the corner of Eustace and Essex Street and meets a postwoman of the night by the name of Mary Donnelly to make sure that he would in fact be thoroughly blown.
Yes. So Johnny Raw, what was his name again?
Johnny Raw is Patrick Keenan.
So this is Patrick Keenan.
They're all Johnny Raws.
I know, yeah, but this is Johnny Raw Keenan has been thoroughly blown on his way to Houston. And what of Johnny Raw more?
They're the Johnny Raw dog pack.
The Johnny Raw dog pack. He's running with the Johnny Raw dogs now.
Yeah. So he's right now you've got Jeff Kenna, you've got Stephen Kelly, then you've got Morton, and you've got Hickey.
That's a great front lineup.
Yeah, it's my Mount Rushmore of Victorian era Dublin policemen.
Sure.
But so he's there chatting to Mary for a while, probably trying to drop down the price.
So he's complete. So wait, but this guy's also like hot on the heels of a murderer, isn't that? I forgot that's how this story started. Yeah. he's run about 30 meters. He's given up, and now he's looking to get thoroughly blown.
Well, yeah, he's kind of like, I'm not going to catch him now, am I? There's no.
Listen, that's it. That's gone. That's off the table. All right.
You would rather have me waste the next 4 hours of my night hunting for a man that's long gone. Long gone. No. Pointless.
Sure, he's probably on the train.
He's better off going back down to the corner of Eustace and Essex Street, getting a blowjob off Mary Donnelly, then heading back out onto the streets to do some pounding the pavement, putting his soles onto the slabs, and doing some actual honest to goodness hard police work.
Yeah,
police work.
So many innuendos in what you're saying now.
But as he's standing there chatting to her, a figure appears out of nowhere, pops out from the shadows holding a gun, and he yells,
"Who?
Stand back!" And Kelly decides not to do that, in fact to do the opposite. Instead, runs towards the man and gets shot in the chest for his troubles.
Okay.
So that's 2 policemen shot now, Kev.
Yeah, so what was his plan? Just charge the gun?
Yeah, I don't think he understood how guns worked.
I love it. Well, from what I know about Victorian era guns, it is sort of like a 50-50 game.
Maybe he was thinking like a footballer, because he would have been. Stephen Kelly. Maybe he's thinking smother the ball like a goalkeeper would do, because I'll make the target smaller by cutting off the angles the bigger I make myself. But that works in football when you're trying to prevent things from going past you. It doesn't work when you're trying to prevent things going into you, because you're making the target bigger.
Sure.
So he gets shot, obviously. Now, within a couple of minutes, his body was surrounded by people and the police. One policeman went and got a cabman. Back to the cabman. So we'll talk about it now. A cabman, Kev, I know what you're thinking at this time, and I hate to break it for you, but it's not some form of a centaur that's half horse, half cart, half man.
So they're not actual. It's a profession.
It's a man who taxis people around on the back of a centaur. And
Oh, good.
he's not some sort of weird centaur. He just employs that. But
Sure,
he
yes.
told him to go. He tells him to go and get Kelly and bring him to the hospital.
Right.
A forward-thinking cop, Kevin, because he doesn't think like, how are we going to get him to the hospital? Grab a horse and cart and we'll put him on that. He's thinking outside the box, Kev. He's an avant-garde.
That's very that deserves your juice. Yeah.
Yeah, expect that to be in my comedy set coming near you very soon.
Yeah.
Now,
Johnny Raw, the avant-garde.
Now, I've gone down those streets before, Kev, for gigs, or also just because I worked in the area. Not on one of my bikes. I'll rent one of Dublin bikes because it doesn't matter the damage the cobblestones will do to that. But it's not a place you want to be cycling down. It's very cobblestoned. I'm trying to think of like cycling that with a beer full of belly. It's not great.
Or even a belly full of beer.
Well, I was going to say a belly full of bullets.
Yeah, fair, Jade. So that's not it's not exactly the smoothest ride to the hospital then.
No, just to reiterate back on from earlier, Hickey, who had found Keenan, had put him on a cart too. So that's 2 policemen shot, both in the back of horse and carts, going to Mercer Hospital, which is now Mercer's Medical Centre, part of the Royal College of Surgeons, Kevin.
Oh, okay.
Keenan now, unfortunately, dies 8 days later due to the gunshot, along with some COVID-19 related complications, I believe.
Sure. So neither of these men die like immediately when they're shot.
No, well, a gunshot to the stomach is like very rarely going to kill you. Not with the guns they were using back then.
Sure.
You're gonna bleed out over days and days and days.
Yeah.
But Keenan, his funeral party or procession was so big that they say that as the back of it was going over O'Connell Bridge, the front of it was only turning into Parnell Street.
That's not that big.
I don't know if that's true or not. I really shouldn't be disrespecting the man by going like, I don't think that many people would have even turned up for that. That's not that many people.
That's not that many people. No. There's not that many people who showed up to his funeral, and even still, you're going to take that away from him. You think they've made up this lie about him. It's not that impressive lie for a guard killed in duty.
No, because usually what people would just say, oh, sure, there must have been about 1,000 people. You don't have to... Maybe there was people turning onto Parnell Street as it was on O'Connell Street, but also maybe there was 17 people and they couldn't organise a single file. A single file, 6 foot distance is minimum between absolutely everyone. You're like, this isn't as impressive. That's not as impressive. But maybe funerals... Maybe it is a lot of people. I can't tell. But do you think funerals were better crack back then?
I'd say it was a day out, like, you know...
But
probably with the fog, they all had to go single file, hand in hand.
I don't know if it was if they'd have the funeral during the fog though, Kev. These are sporadic days, but you can't plan for the fog. But what I was thinking was maybe
I meant that the fog would be there. I don't think they would have planned for the fog. I think they just went out and like the fog was there. Maybe that was in his will that he demanded to have a pathetic fallacy death. I'll only get buried in the fog or the rain. Preferably a thunderstorm, but if I have to settle, at least fog.
Do you not have a prophetic fallacy stipulation in your will?
No, I could get buried on the sunniest day of the year.
When I die, I'll tell you now, as well as the listeners, don't go to my funeral because I'm going to incorporate Scorsese's use of the color red for both like the idea of upcoming ominous situations. So I'll have a giant red sky behind me and everyone's like, oh, it's because he's dead and he was so powerful during his life. And I'd be, no, it's because I'm going to kill all of you from the grave.
There is a good chance I'll have to stay away because I will have been arrested for your murder.
Or dead by then.
No, that's true.
You're a year older than me. And I was going to say less healthy. You're vegetarian, so who knows?
I don't think that balances it.
This is back in a time, anyway, as I was going to say, when... I think maybe funerals were better crack because everyone would go to mass anyway. But like we hated the English, so we couldn't even watch the royal weddings. So the only chance for a procession was a funeral, St. Patrick's Day, or if you won a county championship.
Oh yeah. It's a good excuse to get out and walk in a straight line, you know.
Now, a surgeon by the name of Richard Butcher, which is another case of nominative determinism. It'd be like
I'm getting out of the family trade.
But it's like if you were a porn star and your name was John Wood, or if you were like attracted to female stinky feet and your name was Kevin Larney, or if you had a crippling cocaine addiction and your name was Kevin Larney, or if you were into traveling to secluded underage sex islands populated by the world's rich and famous and your name was Brian O'Toole, it would be it's two on the money. But Butcher felt around the wound for a few days until eventually
for a few days
lodged in. I read a couple of different accounts of this. Some people said it for a couple of times at once, but he screamed so much that he had to leave him, and then he came back afterwards.
This man's obviously in pain. I'll leave it until tomorrow. He'll either be dead and I won't have to deal with it, or we'll try it again.
Well, I think it was a case of either went into his ribs for a couple of times, into his chest, and couldn't find it, and then they were like, all right, see you tomorrow.
Well, I know from my training as a butcher that some of these are spare ribs, so we can just crack them out of the way, and hopefully that'll make more room for bullet finding.
And what's more, they'll be delicious.
Absolutely. Stick these up in the way. He just has a window in the surgery office where he hangs the various amputee bits.
He for sure he lived up to his name because he didn't have any anesthetic for Kelly.
No,
so
why would he?
They just gave him brandy for the pain, and then he was held down for the operation by two orderlies, or as I like to call them, out of orderlies. Now, cutting I am, Kevin, not on.
Just like James Butcher.
This went on for a while to no success until eventually Butcher returns and gets it properly. Just seems like real shit for him, but for Kelly. But then they extract the bullet, and it has a marking on it.
Ooh.
DM, Dublin Metropolitan Police.
No way. That
now that's I read that, and then in anything I read about this, everyone was like, yeah, so it was like a police bullet. Like, and did anyone want to look into that any further to see if it was fired by a policeman or why criminals have police bullets? No, we're good.
Sure,
we're okay.
So Kelly got slid into with a DM, and that's it. I didn't have a second part to that joke, but I thought it was pretty good. Thought it was a pretty good first half.
That was.
But that's fairly forward thinking that the police would have marked their bullets. That's sort of like, I don't know, 1867 version of a body cam, I guess. I'm sure there was uproar at the time as that, we're not going to write our names on the bullets. What if we shoot someone in the head? What if I want to shoot Kelly? And then there's a goddamn DM sign on the bullet. Does it be traced right back to me? I don't think so.
Now, if I was to, because this man's name will come up in another episode this season, surprise. But do you ever hear of a man called PJ Tynan?
I have not.
So he was the number one man of the Dublin Invincibles, the John Boy, if you will. He later we'll talk about the Dublin Invincibles. They're a secret society of the IRA that were like murdering people.
Are we going to talk about them now? Because I want to know more about the Dublin Invincibles. Oh
no, we will talk about them in a full episode because it's quite a thing. But
all right.
The PJ Tynan years later wrote about the events of what actually occurred on that night. There was a failed rebellion in 1867, as we're all aware of. Now, This left hundreds of Irish Americans in their ancestral home as they couldn't get back to the States. So, but they all came over to support the Ra. Do you think that the accent would have worked well back then on Irish girls, like the American accents on Irish girls? Or do you think...
I can't imagine it would have changed that much. So, like, this is 1867...
Oh, I'd say back then you were seen as such a foreign man. You're like, tall, dark, and handsome, even though you'd be a pasty white kid from Boston. But you're like, he's from America, yay!
But a lot of them only would have left
in
45, or like
yes,
they were like they were out of the country for about 10 years, and then they were coming back, big swanky Americans.
It's like they went backpacking for 6 months,
or
on like a nice long J1 and came back with notions. But American guys always ask me that about going to Ireland, and they're like, "Yo, man, hey, over here with your accent, and women love your accent. What about if I went to Ireland?" I'm like, no, because you're a spa. That's not.
Well, hopefully they were using that accent you just used. I don't know what that was. It was like Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. Yo, man. It's like, hey, I'm going over to Ireland. It's like Emo Phillips.
I'll take that. I think I might have just slipped into my Emo Phillips impression in the middle of it.
Hey, Ray. If Emo Phillips had been in 1867 Ireland, he would have cleaned up. I'll tell you that now. I'll tell you that for nothing.
Fair. But anyway, back to the story, because we've been nearly done. PJ Tyden said that at the time there was an informant being held up in a station on Chancery Street, and the Fenians involved in the rebellion that's where they were being tried, and this particular informant was going to rat out a young doctor called Donovan, or else a young doctor / the informant named Donovan was going to rat everybody out. He obviously didn't want that, so they got 8 boys to go up there and shoot the absolute bejesus out of the place. Now, in terms of the plan, it was basically, because of all of the fog and smoke and gunfire and confusion, we just cause a big ruckus and then start shooting. Now we'll get them.
Yeah.
Like, you're shooting into fog. There's people who are falling into canals. You're just going to open fire on a building and then hope you get the guy.
It's foolproof.
Try it. Why not?
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, they didn't get the informant. But,
So they were trying to shoot a specific guy and ended up just shooting 2 cops.
Well, no, this is the very end. I'll get to that. Kev, do you know when people say you'll never forget the day your kid is born?
People do always say that to me, and I always say, haven't a clue who you're talking about, man.
But, this would have been very true, in particular, for one of the 8 boys, because one of the 8 boys, who would have been actually the shooter of Keenan, he's the man on Essex Bridge at the very beginning.
Okay.
His wife had given birth earlier that day, and not long before this, all of these events happened. And in his confusion, he arrived at the spot a little bit too early, realised he was wrong, and by the time he fucking spotted it and went to get up and go leave, he'd been spotted by Keenan, mistook him for an unscrupulous thief or a gunman posing as a prostitute, when he was really just a noble Fenian.
Yeah.
And there's a book, I can't tell if it's historical or fiction, but it's called Shadow of the Brotherhood. Pretty sure it's fiction, about the police inquest into trying to find out all about it after the murders. It deals with the police manhunt and the mysterious, that night, the foggy Fenian fire. Is that too much alliteration?
The foggy Fenian fire.
Foggy Fenian gunman guy.
The fiendish foggy Fenian fire fumbles. But yeah, fatally.
The two men went to jail. So basically, to surmise, they went to go shoot an informant, ended up royally fecking that up, then shot 2 policemen. There's no proof that the second one is any way related to the first one, but it's probably is, because how often were people being shot in Temple Bar? Not very often, Kev. One of them died 8 days after. The other one lived to tell the tale, but obviously couldn't identify the fella who had shot him.
It was a swirling ball of smoke. I've reached peak COVID now, and I've started rewatching Lost.
Okay, how's that going?
It's actually, I love Lost. I have so much time for it. But yeah, the main protagonist so far is a giant ball of fog.
But that is, Kevin, the last official murder in Temple Bar. But far from the last shots.
That was delightful. Well done. That's the last time anyone's been officially murdered in Temple Bar.
Or I've just said that so I can have that nice line to tie it all up at the end.
It's actually the murder capital of Ireland. So, what happened to the guy's kid? I thought you were going to say, when you were leading into the mix-up, that he'd accidentally, he showed up to his wife after having given birth, and instead of giving her flowers, shot her, and then realised his big mistake. Ran back to see Johnny Rowe Keenan there standing with a bouquet, still being like, it's a lovely touch. I never met the man, but he's nothing but good words for him.
I've forgotten to bring my wife a present. Feck it, I'll just give her this package that the boys gave me, and hopefully it's something good in there. And it's a bomb. But so I imagine what happened with the kid was he was raised by his loving father, because they never found anyone for these murders.
And that kid grew up to be Ray Houghton.
Who put the ball in the English net?
This guy.
We've gone very Jack Charlton heavy today, even though we didn't intend on it, and you sprung it on me. I've got a lot of Irish soccer references in there. But yeah, no, that's it for the week, I believe. That's all of us.
Perfect. I enjoyed it.
I've nothing else for you.
That's it. That's all I wanted.
You tell me about Orange Men for weeks. I don't know I don't know what's going on.
We're back to normal service now.
Yeah, so that's I believe that's it.
Very
It's not
good.
as important. It's not as culturally significant as what you've been bringing to the table this year, Kev. But also, I didn't want to do that.
Listen, you told me about Johnny Rose. You told the world about Johnny Rowe. And that's all we really
Yeah, well, I
needed
think-
in this time.
If the audience, I think they've probably figured that out over the years now, or year, I should say. You're more intelligent than I am. And you're more highbrow. I'm more likable. I'm more personable.
Yeah.
I'm good fun. I'm a better drinker.
None of these things are true.
No, they're not. Do you know what I'm really good at though is lying. Great at lying.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I was hoping for a bigger reaction from post Women of the Night.
Yeah, that was very good.
I guess we can close off, but it is. I was reading into this and it made me start thinking about. I've obviously been out of the country, but there's been a lot more shootings. We've had a giant increase, a spate, if you will, Kevin, of shootings.
Have we?
We've gone full gangland since I've left.
I don't know.
Do you not be following this at all?
Not at all. No, I haven't seen anything.
Well,
about it.
I was going to try and set up a conversation, like a tete-a-tete back and forth, where we discuss a possibility of, is this subliminal work from the RT, the Irish government, the media, propagandists? Season 6 of Love Hate, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, they've started putting back. They've started releasing the old episodes.
Well, they're just getting us ready. We're getting it. We won't have Aidan Gillen or Robert Sheehan or
John
Tom
Connors.
Waller. Well, he's there. He's still alive, but he's too busy talking about why our politicians are trying to fuck all of our kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been following that.
I have been following that. I haven't been following the gangland violence. I've just been following John Connors talking about paedophiles.
Yeah, stay away from our kids, you gay man.
Yes.
That doesn't make him a pedophile, John. I said he likes to kiss men. He's going to touch our children.
I was I don't know why I went on to Jim Core's Twitter feed the other day just to check in on him. Jim Core, the male member of the
just
Core.
because you were curious.
I was, I had to scratch my curiosity. Jesus, he's mad. He's stone mad.
Yeah.
But I think
what makes it better is his accent, because even though I don't know how thick of a Dundalk accent he has, but I assume it's quite thick. So every time I read any of his tweets or hear him quoted in anything, it's just it's like they're putting fluoride into the water. The fluoride, like
the fluoride.
Jim, you're thick as shit.
I mean, he's had a rough life. Like anytime you look at a photo of the four of them. You know, I'm sure he spent his entire life where like photographers would just come up and be like, and if you could just step aside there, please, just keep getting brushed out of his own own family shots.
The majority of his life trying to just make sure that his sisters aren't being fucking DP'd by unscrupulous music executives and fans, bouncers. You know what the industry's like, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is Jim there over in the corner reading books about Tower 7.
But Jim, so I went on to his Twitter feed and, the first thing was some picture of Trump's niece, Mary Trump. That was he'd retweeted something from a satire site that was obviously fake. And the second thing was like, I guess it was this Twitter game that was going around.
What an onion.
It's
a joke.
There was some Twitter thing that was going around where you did like, you spelt out your name and you did like @ for every letter of your name, and the first person to come up, you tied them together. You know, the sort of thing that like, that's a cool fun thing for adults to do. But someone had done it, and I get one of the I guess was Roderick, whatever the Minister for Children's name is, and then the P was Patton Oswalt. So someone had taken a screenshot of it and like, why is Roderick in this tweet with self-confessed pedophile Patton Oswalt?
What? Patton Oswalt says...
That was my reaction, Jason, because I really like Patton Oswalt, and not only was he like a paedophile, but like self-proclaimed paedophile,
which is would be a quick turn for someone who's so historically liberal and kind. And I have a feeling he's gotten him confused with
these
Roman Polanski.
The evidence for Patton. I think the evidence they put up was just a tweet where Patton Oswalt said, "Yes, I'm a paedophile," and paedophile was in capitals. And then they're like, well, he said it.
Oh, well, that's a self-confession, to be
That's
fair.
a self-confession. So, I mean, listen, I was as shocked as anyone when I saw Patton Oswalt. I was like, oh no, hardly my Patton Oswalt. One of the finest working comics, Patton Oswalt. Like, because if he was a secret paedophile, I'd be like, all right, that's shocking. But self-confessed, I'm sure that would have been like, as a fan of his stuff, I listened to most of his specials. I'm sure he would have heard that at some point. The subject of his new special, it was very hard for me when my wife died, but luckily I had paedophilia to turn to in my hour of need.
Patton Oswalt, more like Patton Kids. That's ludicrous, though. And I hope Patton sues Jim Core for all of his money.
Oh, no, not at all. That's the sort of thing you just ignore.
What I have been enjoying is people putting up a bunch of photos of John Connors, like, well, he's posing in photographs with other people who've actually been convicted of things that are illegal.
Oh, yeah.
As apart from just this conspiracy theory. Like, I don't know, him and Mike Tyson, no one knows what happened in that hotel room, but there's a man who spent a couple of years in jail, John.
Sure, yeah.
And he's basically saying, if you've ever taken a photo with someone who's done anything bad, you've known about it, you've helped them, and then you should go to jail as well. We can go back through your social media if we need to, not pointing names at anything, but come on now.
Yeah. But it's
Right.
mad. It's all, but like it's always from these from Jim Coro conspiracy theories. Like both of those things, the picture of Mary Trump and Patton Oswalt being a paedophile, were like you could debunk those in about 2 seconds. I don't know why conspiracy theorists are always like able to see through the workings of the government and yet like can't reverse Google search an image. Or check a Twitter account like for more than 2 seconds to realize it's a satire account.
Confirmation bias is a real thing, and it's something that we all have to deal with in terms of, like, I don't care what side of the debate you're on, be it left, centre or right, we'll always look for things that corroborate and tell us that our ideas or theories, will look for evidence that backs that up and supports our claim. So that's probably why. They can't reverse search an image, but they'll find a jumper is this jumper blue and gold or is it red and pink? And also, there's a thread on this jumper, and that thread is blue, and blue's liberal, and Bill Clinton used to be blue. And Bill Clinton, is Jeffrey Epstein, and then Bill Clinton's fucking a bunch of kids.
It's all right there.
So on one sense, you can say, oh, they're all just jumping to conclusions. And then on the other sense, Kev, they've obviously been proven to be right about a lot of things. So it's really all up in the air.
That's very insightful. But I will say that, I've long held the opinion that communion and baptism are not the most important sacraments in Christianity. But then again, I have a confirmation bias. It's good to be back doing stand-up. Good to be back. It's been a while off since the old COVID ring. Writing new stuff. Got new material. Couple of zingers. Couple of gotchas. Couple of whams.
I haven't seen. Oh, wham.
Yeah.
Wake me up. Before we go. Goodbye. See you next week.
Goodbye. Good luck.